It is 1:50 a.m. local time. Above the sleeping grid of Moscow, something small is moving very, very fast. A Ukrainian Liutyi long-range drone cuts through the freezing air at 180 miles per hour, skimming rooftops low enough to disappear into the city's noise. It has already been airborne for 6 hours. It will not get a second attempt. Ahead lies the target, a government ministry tower, dark, guarded, and surrounded by some of the most heavily layered air defenses on Earth. But before it can reach the building, the drone must pass through a corridor of steel and glass. 2 skyscrapers, a gap barely wider than the drone's wingspan. Miss by a few feet, and the mission ends against concrete. Make it through, and Vladimir Putin wakes up to a ministry building on fire. There is no pilot to correct the mistake, no joystick, and no instinct. Only preloaded math, inertial navigation, and a propeller spinning at its limit. Margin for error, 0. Time remaining, 7 minutes. The Liutyi weighs just over 650 pounds, powered by a commercial engine, carrying 160 pounds of high explosive. On paper, it shouldn't survive a city protected by billion-dollar radar systems and interceptor missiles. But tonight isn't about paper. It's about whether a cheap, slow, propeller-driven drone can humiliate the most expensive air defense network ever built. Or whether it dies unseen, erased by a missile that costs more than the drone itself. Either way, Moscow is about to find out. 2 a.m. The Liutyi crosses the outer defensive perimeter. But it isn't flying like a weapon of war. It is executing a Trojan horse protocol. Utilizing onboard machine vision and inertial navigation, the drone mimics the flight profile of a commercial Yandex delivery bot. It is hiding its lethal intent inside a generic civilian signature. Intelligence provided by border partisans confirmed a 20-minute gap in radar coverage due to a Pantsir unit redeploying. But the Russians are paranoid tonight. A remaining Pantsir S1 battery protecting the southern suburbs picks up the slow intruder. The operator doesn't wait for confirmation. He treats the blip as a threat and punches the launch button. A 57E6 hypersonic missile screams off the rail, closing the distance at Mach 4. It looks like a guaranteed kill. But the Ukrainian AI is faster than the Russian reflex. Detecting the radar lock, the Liutyi doesn't pop flares. It dives. It plunges into the urban clutter, the chaotic radar reflections generated by the dense apartment blocks. To the Russian missile seeker, the drone suddenly merges with the concrete signature of a 25-story building. Confused by the echoes, the 57E6 flies past the target and detonates harmlessly in an empty parking lot 220 meters away. The shockwave rattles the drone, sending it drifting toward a rooftop communications antenna. But the flight computer executes a violent zigzag maneuver. It clears the steel structure by inches before leveling out. The Russians just shot at a ghost, and they missed. 2:03 a.m. The Liutyi isn't flying alone anymore. It brought a suicide squad. Deploying from a separate vector, a swarm of cheap, expendable Rubaka drones enters the airspace. These aren't carrying warheads, and they are carrying radar reflectors. They are designed to make a $12,000 piece of plastic look like a heavy bomber on a radar screen. They scream for attention, and the Russian defense network takes the bait, hook, line, and sinker. The Pantsir S1 batteries parked in the courtyards of ministry buildings activate immediately. Their cannons and missiles turn the night sky into a chaotic shooting gallery. In 3 minutes, 14 missiles are expended. 12 decoys are obliterated. The Russian commanders see the radar clear. They believe they have achieved a 100% interception rate. They are celebrating a victory against flying scrap metal. While the sky above erupts in fire, the real Liutyi executes a maneuver that defies standard aviation safety. It drops into the urban valley, the narrow corridor of air between 2 massive residential skyscrapers. By flying below the roofline, the drone uses the curvature of the glass and steel towers to physically block the line of sight of the ground-based radars. It is navigating purely on machine vision, reading the windows and streets like a map. But physics is unforgiving. A hidden Tor M2 battery positioned in a park just 5 miles away gets a lucky radar return. As the drone banks around a corner, a missile launches instantly. The Liutyi's AI detects the thermal bloom of the launch and commits to a violently steep 65-degree dive. It isn't trying to outrun the missile, it is trying to crash safely. The Tor missile loses its lock in the ground clutter and detonates approximately 140 feet above the drone. The shockwave slams into the Liutyi like a sledgehammer, flipping it 60 degrees to the right. The onboard gyroscope screams a warning. For a heart-stopping second, the drone falls like a stone. But the flight computer overcompensates, snapping the wings level just yards above the streetlights. The mission is still a go. Realizing the kinetic interceptions are failing, the Russian defense grid activates its ultimate non-kinetic weapon. A massive, broadband jamming spike floods the spectrum. They effectively delete GPS from the atmosphere over Moscow. The Liutyi's satellite link is severed instantly. By all conventional logic, the drone should now be a blind, drifting piece of plastic. But the Russians are fighting the last war. The Liutyi doesn't need satellites to know where it is. It switches to optical flow navigation. The onboard AI compares the real-time video feed of the streets below with a preloaded 3D digital map of the city. It isn't navigating by coordinates anymore. It is navigating by landmarks, and it is reading the city of Moscow like a QR code. On the ground, a modernized Pantsir SM unit spots the thermal signature. This variant is carrying the new Gvozd mini-missiles, designed specifically to hunt drone swarms. The operator unleashes a 2-missile barrage. The Liutyi responds by treating the city center like a high-stakes video game. It banks hard, weaving between office blocks with a fluidity no human pilot could replicate in the dark. One missile slams into a shopping center. The other loses energy and detonates in the air. The explosion creates a violent pocket of turbulence. The Liutyi is thrown sideways. In the bunker, the operator executes a desperate manual override. He punches the aileron trim. The drone snaps back to center, missing a concrete corner by less than 5 feet. The jammer failed, and missiles failed. The drone is still alive. 2:09 a.m. The Liutyi finally breaks cover, exposing itself to the heart of the capital. Looming directly ahead is the target, a 400-foot government tower, its windows still glowing with the lights of late-night executive meetings. The element of surprise is gone. A Pantsir S1 unit parked in the building's courtyard snaps its tracking radar onto the incoming bandit. The turret spins with mechanical aggression. It unleashes a ripple fire sequence, 5 missiles in under 2 seconds. A literal wall of high explosives erupts between the drone and the tower. But the Russian defensive geometry has a fatal flaw. On the Ukrainian control screen, a decrypted flash message from local partisans updates the map. The secondary Pantsir unit relocated 2 minutes ago for refueling, leaving a momentary radar shadow between 2 office blocks. The Liutyi doesn't try to go over the wall of fire. It goes around it. The AI executes a violent bank to the right. The escape, however, is not clean. The final Russian missile detonates 100 feet off the tail. Hot tungsten shrapnel sprays the rear fuselage. A jagged chunk is taken out of the pusher propeller. Yellow warning lights flood the operator's display. Vibration, critical. Engine efficiency, 12%. The smooth hum of the electric motor turns into a grinding mechanical scream. The drone shudders violently, bleeding speed and altitude. But the inertial guidance system refuses to quit. It limps out of the smoke, battered and vibrating. The target now fills the entire camera lens. The Liutyi climbs heavily to 1,020 feet, trading its last reserves of battery power for potential energy. Then, it tips its nose forward and commits to the endgame. The dive is steep, and 75-degree plunge that turns the damaged aircraft into a kinetic dart. Gravity takes over where the engine is failing. The airspeed indicator climbs back past 175 miles per hour. The airframe vibrates violently. On the ground, the Pantsir operator abandons his radar entirely. He looks through the optical sight and squeezes the trigger. The twin 30mm cannons roar to life, spitting high explosive shells at a rate of 75 rounds per second. A river of tracers erupts, slashing upward into the night sky. It sounds like a giant canvas sheet being ripped in half. But the geometry of urban warfare is brutal. The drone is coming in too steep. The background is too cluttered. The Russian shells miss the diving Liutyi by inches, smashing into the glass and masonry of the surrounding civilian buildings, raining concrete dust onto the streets below. 3 seconds to impact is. The onboard AI detects the incoming fire. It executes one final pre-programmed twitch, a slight barrel roll to throw off the ballistic solution of the cannons. It doesn't need GPS and pilot. The machine vision locks onto the center window of the 15th floor with pixel-perfect obsession. By 2:25 a.m., the illusion of Moscow's invincibility is no longer theoretical, and it is burning. Across the capital, systems fail in real time. The power grid stutters. Airports initiate emergency shutdowns. The Garden Ring freezes into a ribbon of stalled traffic, flashing lights, and confusion. This is what modern disruption looks like. Not a single explosion, but cascading uncertainty. On state television, the response is immediate and rehearsed. Anchors read from prepared statements. Officials insist the drone was successfully intercepted. They describe the fire as falling debris, a minor incident, and fully under control. But the narrative doesn't survive contact with reality. Within minutes, unfiltered footage floods the internet. Smartphones capture the final seconds, the clean approach, the deliberate dive, the unmistakable impact. No interceptor and no deflection, just a building absorbing the strike. The truth spreads faster than any press release ever could, and that is the real damage. Because this wasn't just a ministry hit, it was a message delivered to every planner, every commander, every air defense officer watching closely. If Moscow can be reached like this, no city is untouchable. If this system failed here, it can fail anywhere. Tomorrow, the building will be cordoned off. Investigations will begin. New defenses will be promised. But tonight, one fact remains unavoidable. A relatively cheap drone forced the world's most fortified capital into damage control. So here's the question I'll leave you with. Does this strike signal a fundamental shift, where traditional air defense can no longer keep pace with cheap, adaptive threats? Or was this a rare gap, an exception rather than the new rule? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you liked the video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.